Hi, this is Rahul with RideWithRahul.com. Today is a very special day. Today we are going to ride the KTM RC390. This road test will be covered over 200 km stretch on actual Indian road conditions. So if you want to know how the aggressive track-focused RC deals with the streets of the subcontinent, then we have some realistic answers ready for you.
By now, all of you must be familiar with the specs. 44 bhp of power from that same engine of 373.2cc carried over from the Duke 390. The same Metzeler Sportec M5s that are now a legend for their wet grip. A trellis frame which has been slightly modified. Clip-on handlebars, a new and aggressive riding position, a readjusted, steeper rake angle in the steering for sharper handling.
But you know what? Forget all that. You can get all that information from the KTM website. When you ride a motorcycle for the first time, it gives you a feel. And if it's a good motorcycle, it connects with you. At the end of the day, after the ride is over, it leaves you with a story. Let me tell you my story.
It started at the crack of dawn near the Belgravia Expressway. I was apprehensive after 1 year of getting accustomed to the naked bike riding position that the RC would feel awkward and uneasy. I was also thinking about the future owners. Would this bike work under our conditions? I was mostly worried about the bad roads. Gave it a go immediately on some loose gravel. My fears were right. The rear, which is now lighter on the RC, felt that it might spin if I applied too much throttle. I felt that it would not be able to adjust to this riding position. I was wrong. It's a bad idea to run the bike on the worst surface when you're trying to adjust to it. As soon as I was on some well-laid tarmac, I felt the first signs of traction. I can never forget the first time I leaned into a corner. It was a very slight lean, but in that first kiss, a lot was communicated. "You could trust me," she said to me. And trust her I did. I start with handling because this is not something that the spec sheets can ever explain. The front is heavier, but flicking the bike at low speeds is extremely easy, and especially if you know how to counter steer. But if I have to put my finger on one particular button, it's high speed cornering. There's just so much feel from that front wheel through those low clip-on handlebars that you would get the confidence to lean more. And when you do lean more, the tires are there to give you that extra edge grip needed for those angles. A pro rider might just take an average 150cc and go knee down with it, but you can't do this if you have the same motorcycle. On the RC390 you can actually learn how to do knee down cornering. I have factored in that the tires on the test ride bike are brand new, and with some usage, some of the feedback and grip will fade away. Still, it remains a fact that I have never felt more comfortable cornering on a motorcycle. Corner entry, mid-corner stability, and that slingshot exit, everything is just as I wanted it. And as a learner, you would make mistakes. With this bike, you can just correct your course mid-corner, or just use two fingers on the front brake slightly to shed a little bit of speed if you have entered the corner too fast. The fact that you can make a mistake and correct it makes you go harder at it. In one sentence, this bike corners way better than R15 Ninja CBR and can only be compared to the Super Sports 600cc class bikes. There, I've just said it. Now you can hate on it. We have the same brakes carried over from Duke 390, and right as before, they are providing a ton of feedback, which is very important while using slight brake for cornering. But when you do require to go hard at it, the brakes do provide strong bite. KTM has balanced these two abilities very well, but I did feel more feedback from the front brake thanks to the leaning forward posture. And it seems on my channel that this riding posture is the most common question. Yes, it is more aggressive than R15, CBR, Ninja 300 or any other small capacity sport bike being sold in India currently. Coming out of the corner, you get the feel of a MotoGP rider. But how does this new and aggressive posture work for our normal conditions? Taking the RC over hours and hours of well-laid roads on the highway is actually not at all tiring. If you ride at 120 to 150 km per hour speed, thanks to less wind blast, it is actually more relaxing. You have to be a bit fit though. To avoid the wind blast, you have to crouch, and crouching does feel very natural on this bike. On a series of small bumps, as it's commonly found on our bridges, I found the RC posture better to the upright posture because leaning forward makes your back take less impact over bumps. More impact is taken by your wrists and forearms. On a surface of broken or patchy roads, the RC feels composed. The suspension is still stiff, but not as stiff as the Duke. Again, it's your forearms that end up taking the vibrations. On a surface of village roads or on soft earth, sand, the RC seems unsure, especially over the undulations, but it sucks in off-road riding. So maybe other riders can be a bit more comfortable. The bumps and the other bad conditions I could easily handle, but I felt the most amount of stress on the forearms riding on soft ground. On gravel, you can actually feel the tiny pieces moving under your tire, causing the front end to skid and hop very slightly. This is where the RC felt most unsure, and I felt it better to take it slow. Maybe after a few days of riding, you'll get some improvements. Still on the ergonomics, does this aggressive riding posture really affect us? To answer this, we took 3 different riders, myself 5 feet 8 inches and about 130 pounds, Sanat, my co-tester, 6 feet and 198 pounds, and Sudeep, a tough as nails mechanic who's only 5 feet 6 inches and weighs similar to me. All 3 of us were comfortable on the bike. Sanat, 390 owner himself, mentioned that the RC was more suited for a taller rider like him. I, at 5 feet 8 inches, could get both my feet down at the same time. Even if you're about 5 feet 5 or 5 feet 6, I think you can still adjust to this 820 mm of seat height that KTM has provided. It's aggressive, but it's not impractical. This is the most important question of all, practicality. We all know it does excellent in track, and I've already talked about the handling and braking in depth, but 90% of the people won't be able to keep this as their track day or weekend only motorcycle. This will be the single bike in many garages. So for this motorcycle to work for me and for most other riders, it has to do 3 things. 1. Reasonable amount of city commute. 2. A weekend short tour of about 300 km to a nice riding destination, as the culture is catching up these days. 3. Aggressive sport riding. We already know that the RC does this. So let's take a look at the points one by one. First is city commute. At an average speed of 20 km per hour, that leaning forward is going to feel awkward, and those clip-ons are not going to give you that low speed flickability or weaving through stationary traffic. But this is all expected. People are riding R15 through city, and I've seen much heavier Hyosung GT650 or the GT250 doing city commute as well. This bike is still very lightweight, and if you do end up commuting, this will manage just fine. Again stressing, not as good as a street naked, but livable. Oh, and the heat now flows downwards through the vents in the underbelly fairing, so no fry in your legs, and that is a major advantage in city riding. Highway riding, especially weekend tour type where you only take the good roads, is immense pleasure. You can enjoy the big bike feel, and the wind blast is reduced by about 70% over speeds of 130 km per hour. Below that, the difference in wind blast is slight, as serious wind blasts bother me only after 1:30. So weekend trips should be comfortable with your girlfriend. Did I mention girlfriend? Oh yes, Pillion Rider comfort has been improved by leaps and bounds. The other day, I was there for the unveiling, and a couple took the test drive, and the girl immediately said that she was much more comfortable on a pillion seat. My friend, who has done about 500 kilometers in two-up touring on the Duke 390 with me, he also agrees. RC pillion seat is much better. It's great that KTM took this feedback and this lack of pillion seat comfort and they have solved it. The RC is designed to be a committed sport riding motorcycle, but it's practical enough to live day to day. Sure, you'll have to live with a few quirks, but considering that you're getting a very well engineered sport bike that will help you train in sport riding, it's really worth the investment. And if you were apprehensive that you won't be able to use it day to day, well, even I was. But after spending 6 hours with her, I'm convinced that this can become an everyday motorcycle if you need it to play that role as well. And why only day? If you want to go for night drives, then the projectors are really good. Take the low beam for example. It's so wide that you can spot the pedestrians right off the pavements, so you get a very wide feel in the low beam. The high beam is functional as always, but KTM has seen that while we switch to the high beam, the low beam is also on, giving us this very close area viewability even when we are on the high beam, making us feel more safe and giving us that confidence in night rides. When we started riding this motorcycle early morning, the light was so low that we didn't even get a proper look at it. After a bit of riding, the big smile plastered on my face thanks to the first session of cornering, I started looking at the motorcycle. I've analyzed the styling on a different video, so I'll just keep it simple here. You can take a look at the other video if you want to get all technical on the styling part with me. Styling is brutal and aggressive. When I looked at it, I knew this is inspired from the KTM Moto 3 bike, and it never felt for one moment that I was riding a fair Duke. Always looks and feels like an all-new motorcycle. The motorcycle also has immense road presence. Wherever we went, the RC turned heads. There was a small crowd gathered around us at one point of time, and they took turns taking selfies and nearly knocked themselves over for the first opportunity for photographs. This bike made my co-tester feel like a superstar and made me want to buy an Alpinestar suit and jumped into the PIC.
Let's just say this style provokes thoughts, conversations, and emotions. Having ridden the Duke for so long, this is where we were not looking to get surprised. The motorcycle likes staying in its mid-range, which is its biggest strength. The longer gear ratio also means that you have to stay in the right gear to enjoy the power, but when you are in the wrong gear, you can still pull away. Overtaking has always been a piece of cake and it remains so. We expect the same, leaving away everyone behind in the launches when the traffic light turns green within city riding. The explosive acceleration of the Duke is somewhat tamed. In truth, it's just a shade slower off the line, but the bike is more of a sport bike and loses the hooligan character of the Duke to appear more refined. And yes, the refinement on a motorcycle not even past its running in period did surprise me. It seems like KTM R&D has improved silently. We wanted to be sure that the information we provide you is accurate, and to do just that, we rode the bike at various speeds and various RPMs. We did sudden rolling accelerations in various RPM and gear to see what the motorcycle was capable of. It always pulled strongly provided it was in the right gear. If you are familiar with the Duke 390's power delivery, then this one is very close to that. There is however one change: the top end is stronger, or at least it feels that way. This is not an engine feature but an aerodynamics feature. 140 km/h comes easily, and if you want to take it all the way up to 170 and maybe beyond that, it does that very smoothly. Ducking under the screen, you get minimum wind blast, helping you to push forward comfortably. Doing those 150 plus speeds was always possible, and have done them on my own naked Duke for a while. but here it's just so comfortable. There is one warning though, you feel you're going slower, but the speedo tells you a different story. Please be careful. It's very easy to get carried away in the spirit of riding the RC390. The RC390 connected with me, and it's very tough to criticize a motorcycle that is connected to the rider so strongly, but I'll still try to criticize the motorcycle and find whatever parts I did not like. First of all, the heavy clutch from the Duke 390 is carried over, and we have already seen in the previous version that riding it in city traffic becomes very difficult thanks to the hard clutch, and that disadvantage is carried over to the RC. I'm not going to criticize the aggressive leaning posture because that's what the motorcycle was designed like, and it does its purpose pretty well. The underbelly fairing, a lot of my friends were worried that it might scrape. We tested it over 12 very high bumpers and it did not scrape. We also have video evidence of that. So I think that overall the motorcycle is very hard to criticize. My friend found a few quality issues, like he did not like the quality of the brake and clutch lever. Again, it's coming from the Duke 390, so the same that we have on our bikes, but he wanted something better. He also said that the clutch cable is rubbing against one part of the console because this is a modified console of the Duke 390, and there have been some clamps. KTM is trying to solve it through some clamps, but maybe it could have been done in a better way. I really tried very hard to find more negative points about the motorcycle, and I know that city riding will be a little difficult with that aggressive riding posture, especially if you're adjusted to riding non-fair naked bikes with standard handlebars. The clip-ons may be a little bit of a complication, but honestly I could not find any real major disadvantage with the RC390, so I'm just gonna keep it short and conclude it there. Thanks for watching this review, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did riding the RC on the highway and on the twisties. So please do subscribe, please comment, and if you feel like, you can also enter the competition. This is Rahul, I'm signing off, but I'll see you next time, and I'll see you very soon.